welcome to the what year month is it? December edition of the Patch Tuesday Support Group. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and people will continue to flow in. And we're excited to once again bring you some super exciting news about the latest vulnerabilities and security incidents. And as always, Jordan will lead us off and walk through some of the super fun stats. I have yet again another long list of interesting and concerning and sometimes just straight out humorous events and news to share. And we are joined this month by Aria Hanson, a good friend and foe, to speak about a whole bunch of things.
You want to debate that, Aria?
I thought we were best friends, Brian.
BFFs. So with that, as always, I'll hand it over to, what's your name again, Jordan? Jordan.
That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the one. All right, this time I'm going to go ahead and present data that I have carefully curated, and by that I mean aggressively curated into Power BI from not the TSA security line, actually sitting at my desk presenting this data this time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick, and we're going to jump around through a couple of things. So first, let's go ahead and bring up this guy. See if I've done this correctly. Turns out Zoom is hard. Computers are also hard. This is fine. Cool. Everybody see that? Okay.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick too, Jordan. Remember, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the questions and answers section, and all the links that we'll be talking about will be down in the resources tab down below as well. Continue, good sir.
Okay. So, bringing some of the information together this month, starting off first in the world of Microsoft updates. We had a wonderful 27 unique KBs this month, so a kind of light month in terms of the number of patches that we actually need to go out and apply that are out there. A whopping, I say that light, knowing full well some of the information that's coming up ahead of us here, with 67/70, depending on what date point in time you happen to choose to pull your data from. There's been some changes since yesterday when I first pulled this data. Some people are now saying 70. Some people are going all the way up so far as 71. It just depends on what point in time you exactly pick for the data for it. Of all of those you wonderful, joyous updates that we've released this month, of the 27, 16 of them received a rating of critical, 10 of them received a rating of important, and 2 of them, 2 lowly, poor Office project versions, received a rating of, nobody cares, of not applicable for them. Apparently it's, fine if we can run arbitrary code when we use Project 2016, I guess. They received a rating of not applicable. Don't ask me why, but yeah, arbitrary code inside of the Microsoft project updates if you happen to care about what the not applicable updates are. Overall, this is lower number of updates and lower number of total vulnerabilities than what you've seen in some other reasons.
Sorry, I have to go back. Yeah. Like, Aria, you're going to take the fifth on this one, but I remember somebody was talking about the Microsoft project, and someone's like, do you think they actually use Microsoft project to plan Microsoft project?
That is a great question. I can go investigate that for you, Brian, but I will tell you, I don't personally, but I'm sure there are people out there that do. And I hope if there are, they actually apply the security fixes, because both of those not applicable started with there are security vulnerabilities.
Yeah,
which is really confusing as a rating system. Just saying.
Applicable to someone, I'm just saying.
Right. Like the classification is A. They weren't critical, they weren't important apparently. So if you got ADRs or some type of filtering that you're using to figure out how you're deploying updates, you ain't gonna find a filter there on those ones for that.
Yeah, sorry, project is just one that always sticks out to me, because at my last job where I did this at scale, we had to. This is 5 years ago, but we're still deploying Project 2010 because there was some huge long-running project. It was all in Project 2010 files, and it was like, yep, we can't ever update this into this project that will never end. Finally ends. Anyway, sorry. Go on. I love Project. Go Project.
It's fine. It's great. So real quick here, of these ones, of the different vulnerabilities that did exist this month in all of these, regardless of whether they had an update classification or not, or a severity, I should say, or not, there was one that constituted as a defense in depth, 5 that resulted from denial of service, 27 elevations of privilege, 7 information disclosures, 31 remote code execution, and 2 spoofing cases. We're going to go ahead and jump into some specifics real quick here. So I'm going to thoroughly confuse everybody on our production team by stopping sharing and then resharing something else entirely. Sorry in advance.
I hope it's project.
Now for something.
And now for something completely
different.
So we're going to pull up this wonderful, joyous security update guide. Again, for those of us who this is your first time here, if you have not familiarized yourself with msrc.microsoft.com/update-guide, you should. For everybody else who's here, you've already looked at this, hopefully, and you've gone through and read it. I like to add a couple of extra columns here on the sidebar, and I've gone ahead and I've done so. And some of these, I believe, are going to be relevant to something that Brian wants to talk about later on today. One of the things I like to go ahead and sort on, and happen to be the ones that we're going to look at today, are the ones that have active exploitations currently out there in the wild. Our very first one here in the list here is going to be CVE 2024-49138. That'll be in the chat probably somewhere, or at least in the resource list here. This was basically a Windows Common Log File System driver elevation privilege. Ironically brought to you by a certain team that seems to know some things about drivers recently. They may have had some reason to go and investigate and learn a lot of things about drivers recently for some reason. Don't know why. And apparently there is the ability to regain system access by doing a buffer overflow. And there is active exploit code in here where you can go ahead and gain system access through this. This includes running things from lower VMs as well in order to gain access to machines. So kind of a fun one, kind of new, kind of snuck in very much so under the wire at the last minute on December 10th in terms of the updates that have come out recently. Not a lot to be said about it. It's going to be super, super duper fun because, you know, it's not used in anything, right? It's going to be everything, basically. If it logs, it's going to probably have it. So there's going to be some type of a patch for basically everything that has logs, which is every currently supported version of Windows out there along the way. Another one to touch base on real quick here. I'm going to go ahead and skip over the partner.microsoft.com one here. If people want to look at it, they can. I think this one's much more interesting, which is Windows Task Scheduler Elevation Vulnerability. This one has recently had some updated information on it, and by recently, I mean basically this is one that went from November 12th and then November 14th, and there's some more information still coming on it. Yes, we could have covered it last month, but it's worth talking about this month, specifically because you can do attacks from app containers, which is interesting, where you can actually leverage app containers to then climb inside of it from a process tree perspective. So that's kind of fun. Again, you're going to note that it's basically all of the Windows machines, so you should patch the cumulative updates this month. You should care about this. And then the other one that I want to just kind of touch on here that you might notice, if we kind of slide this over here, you might find kind of interesting. See if I can make enough room here between these two. No, I'm not going to be able to, so let's remove a column here. Let's dump that one. It's fine, right? It's fine too. We don't need that. So you might find this interesting. There's a trend here of, let's see if we can find this, where it was. Windows lightweight directory access protocols, remote code execution vulnerabilities. There have been a couple of different conversations recently coming around about all of the LDAP things, and I think this is where Brian is going to have some fun later on. We'll see. I'm making a guess. I'm making a targeted guess for it. But the last one is just in case anybody happens to... I'm wrong?
You're wrong, but right. I do love some LDAP vulnerabilities, so I'm here for it.
I'm used to it when it comes to you. And the last one that I want to show you here, just in case anybody still is playing along at home with us at home, anybody happens to have SCOM? Turns out that SCOM had an update this month. So if you're still running SCOM on-prem, you should go and take a look at that and patch it, because if you were running SCOM 2019, 2022, or 2025, you actually do have a security update this month to go out and fix. So don't let that sneak through the cracks on you if you happen to be still running some of that on-prem infrastructure for it. All right, so let's take a quick look here at some of the Patch My PC updates that have come out this month for third parties and our wonderful, joyous browser wars. In terms of total unique updates that Patch My PC has released from November to December, we've released 1,276 updates. That's more than a few. Inside of those 1,276 updates, not including the one from Google Chrome yesterday, we had, because they fixed a whole bunch of vulnerabilities yesterday, it turns out. Google Chrome, there were 6. Microsoft Edge, there were 16. Firefox, there were 10. And Opera, there were 8. Total unique vulnerabilities across a bunch of different things was 37. Now, this is a much lower number than usual for here, largely because of the fact that as we were kind of ripping through a bunch of things, the same vulnerabilities started repeating themselves, this month, turns out. We had a vulnerability depth of 34, which, despite Brian's insistence that this is a made-up number, it's not. I refuse to allow it to be a made-up number. What vulnerability depth means within this context is where a particular vulnerability shows up across multiple different products in an environment for it. Or where there is vulnerabilities that show up across a ton of different things and across different iteration paths, basically. And there are 34 widespread CVEs where those vulnerabilities showed up across many, many, many different products. In terms of classifications, ignore this drivers here. It's a lie, I assure you. It actually is a driver, though. That's not saying that we patch drivers. device. What is
dot,
that?
dot, dot, dot. Yeah.
Dot. Maybe. There were, however, 899 that were just updates, just regular old
Andrew,
updates.
take your shot.
A few security updates, only 205 that actually are related to security pieces for it. A couple of drivers, one here. Turns out there were 3 unique vulnerabilities in those ones for it. And it turns out there's only one critical update, and it wasn't any of the browsers. I'll figure out what that is while Brian is talking here, I guess, and let you know in the chat.
You know how many things I have open, though?
Ronnie's rooting for you, Brian. You can do it. Don't let Ronnie down.
Okay, fine. There you go.
Full screen is fine. It's just, here's all my chat history that maybe isn't.
So let's start off with some fun patching news. That's not actually what I'm displaying it. This month, there seems to be no .NET or MSRC updates. That's shouldn't be surprising. Sometimes that catches people off guard. So if you don't see some .NET community updates this month, that is correct. I'm seeing some anecdotal evidence that some workstations, the updates, and I'm not 100% sure if it's Windows 10 or 11. There are some slight UI changes. The things I'm hearing from is that the date format might be abbreviated, and which again sounds super small and ridiculous, but we all have users and they make tickets for reasons. Also, that Windows Spotlight, if it was disabled or changed via GPO or some other setting, that might be reverted. And so if you had a background that was set, I'm hearing some people say, okay, that's getting changed. Nothing too crazy. We did get some things fixed that I want to highlight here, because I know this made the rounds last month, that if you're using sysprep to generalize a device, that you were getting an error. That is in theory fixed in this month's cumulative update. And in the preview update, they also had a fix for if you replace a motherboard. So these are 2 things that I know I've seen people talk about that there were issues, and those should be fixed in this month's cumulative updates, which is yay, nice. There is, for all of those, still running Exchange Server Online, IDOD. I don't even know if they do. I'm just guessing. But if you are, there is a service update or SU for it, which then went poorly, and so they re-released it. So there's a new version of that was released late in November. And even that, the newest version, still has a time zone issue. And there's a workaround here you may want to go ahead and review. Jumping into vulnerability information, if you are using a Palo Alto firewall, there is a pretty high 9.3 RCE for it that affects anything that's Palo OS, 10.1 to 11.2. So again, if you're using their products, you are going to want to go ahead and pay attention to this. Macs, sometimes Mac has 0 days. This is specific to their Intel chipsets. I don't 100% know why, but you can go ahead if you have any of those and they're running Sequoia 15.111. I'm going to go ahead and push out this update. It is I forget what the CVSS score on this, but it's unpleasant. Not even close to last. This is interesting. If you ever are trying to find out how you might advertise your cybersecurity skills, what if you just walk into a company and try and Hexor it? That is literally what one gentleman did. He walked in and basically did a unscheduled penetration test, and then left his proverbial calling card behind to tell them to fix it. It went as well as you might expect for him. So that's just a fun little read there. Moving along, this is a fun idea. What if somebody sends you a Word document? You're like, well, that's dumb. I shouldn't open a Word document. But what if but it's okay. If they open it, there'll be all sorts of protections to make sure that there's nothing bad in that Word document.
Brian, yes. I need to know is that novell or is it novel?
Novel. This is okay. Novel.
Just needed to know when I first read that there. I was real concerned that somebody was using Novell servers to launch a phishing campaign, and I got real nervous for a moment.
Yeah, novel. It's the thing made out of paper with all the words in it. I'll talk to you about it later. I'll show you.
All right, fair enough. Thanks. If you could read me a bedtime one, that'd be great.
But so this particular hack, if you will, is that if it sends you, they're going to email you a corrupted Word file, and Word will helpfully fix it for you, and then display you a nice QR code. Which, as Jordan will tell you, anytime you see QR code, you have a moral imperative to bring out your cell phone and click on it. Right, Jordan?
Please.
Yes.
Do
yes.
Did
we finish?
No. Stop.
This is another fun one. So this isn't actually specific to Starbucks. So any users of this sort of supply chain management cloud service called Blue Yonder. This has impacted Ford and some grocery chains. This is kind of an early reporting where Starbucks was hit by it. They go ahead and manually pay their baristas. I can't even imagine what that looks like. But I do want you to all be safe knowing that Blue Yonder went ahead and hired CrowdStrike. So it's going to go just fine. I'm sure that's fixed up already. Again, the underlying thing actually isn't really Starbucks. It's Blue Yonder, which is a SaaS provider for, as I understand it, supply chain sort of management. So it's not just Starbucks. It's a whole bunch of other people. A moment of silence for anyone who is a big Stoli fan. They have gone. This is interesting only because we often hear about. We've been talking every month. We come and talk about. But every month I go look at the news. Yes, Jordan.
I thought you were just excited about vodka at first. I thought this was just an excuse for you to talk about vodka at first. Then I read the rest of the title and went, "Oh no, he actually has legitimate reason on here." All right.
Right. There's another one that's just for the lulz. But this one is interesting because we always every month I go and look through, and it's just kind of, even my son this morning was looking at my list. He's like, "Wow, that's all the people getting hacked." I'm like, "Yeah, people get hacked all the time." And we usually we hear about it, and then you don't really know what happens. And here, okay, yeah, they went straight to bankruptcy. Now there was a little fun group where Russia may have just taken over all of their manufacturing facilities in that country. So that's a nice, fun little twist. But if you are a Stoli fan, go ahead and here's an article for you to read and week. Okay. We've been talking about this one for a couple of months now. It's come up that China is generally believed to have hacked the U.S. at the telecom level, and this should be no surprise. We weren't the only ones, and so it's actually broader than just the U.S. And of course it was, and so this continues to be kind of a thing that we keep hearing about. It does kind of scare the crap out of me. This one is super fun, and somebody mentioned this. So, are you running outdated and end-of-life versions of Windows? If you are, I'm going to give you a shock of your life. They are vulnerable. Now, what truly surprises me, and I kind of knew these guys, but there's actually a group of people releasing patches for them. Yes, that is correct. You can download an unofficial patch for the end of life. Oh,
just for the record, not a great idea. As far as strategies go, this is not the best strategy.
This explains it. I had seen this. I'd seen this in the news, and I was trying to find the CVE, and now seeing that no CVE for it, this explains it. Now why I couldn't find that, Brian.
Yeah. Do you even make CVEs for things that are inherently end of life? I mean, I guess. Do they? I don't know. That's a legitimate question.
We got one on, what was it? I want to say a year ago. We got one for, I think it was a version of Windows 8 that was dead, out of support. There's no patches for it or something like that.
Right.
My main comment though, Jordan, if you're saying a supported OS is vulnerable, what on earth do you think an end of life OS is?
Right. And to be clear, sorry,
on the internet, it's fine.
Matt Wilkinson pointed out, it is sitting here right in front of us. It's not just end of life operating systems. It's also includes up to the latest Windows 11, 24H2, and Server 2022. I don't think that when I was reading this, they are unsure of whether it's impacted by 2025. If you know, Aria, you can jump in or not.
But does it have a CVE yet? No,
there's no CVE. So yes, I'm just pointing this out there, so you know, there are, the workaround is to disable NTLM, but if you could have done that, you probably have already done that. And there is, as I understand, for the supported versions, there is no update released yet, officially from Microsoft. But there's this unofficial one that you should totally not deploy.
I'm really glad that you ended that sentence with "not deploy," because I was for a second there concerned that you were gonna say you should, and I was gonna get my car. I was gonna drive to your house.
Jordan, this is a safe space to talk about patching. We don't.
It was about to become a hostile work environment.
So already long has been a hostile work environment. Moving along, if you are a fan of Open Work or WRT, and maybe if you had I forget what the Netgear and WTG something router and switch, if you are using this and you are a fan, know that their firmware update process at an RCE that would literally allow anyone on the internet, I mean, presumably if this thing was connected to the internet, since it's networking gear, it probably is, it allowed pretty much any attacker to automatically update the firmware on that. So if you are running any of that software for fun and profit, go ahead and make sure that you update it right freaking now. Huntress found I'm not deeply aware of Clio's products, but as I understand it, they are used across some industries for very large file transfers, and it was apparently found to be insecure. And so you're going to want to go ahead and make sure you're using Miss Clio, exactly. I didn't name the company, either my present one or Clio. But if you're using the other products, you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that you pay attention and update that. Avanti, we love to talk about Avanti here. So their Connect Secure has I've never seen this before, I don't think, a CVSS score of 10. So that should scare the crap out of you, given that I believe this is a VPN remote connection kind of deal. And all the details are here. This is, you will want to go ahead and make sure you update that right now. Lastly, just for the lulls, in terms of security stuff, man, when they came for Avanti, it was like, when they come for Palo Alto, but when they come for Krispy Kreme, as a Canadian, I am deeply offended. I
thought you were on board with it, as long as they don't come for your Timmies.
Yeah, if they came from Tim Hortons, it'd be absolute, we're talking nuclear warfare.
War crimes, we'd need a new Geneva Convention at that point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you want to see some Canadians get pissed off and start rioting. Go ahead and take down Timmy's. But man, who would hit Krispy Kreme? That's just cruel. So that moves us on away from some of the industry news. I want to talk more about some Ignite stuff. And actually, before we get to Ignite, I want to call this out because Aria and I were talking about this the other day. There is some confusion about this. So earlier this month, our friend Stephen Hoskins, who I'm lucky to know, got to do his first ever Windows IT blog, and he lays out the importance and criticality of having TPM 2.0 and as a requirement for Windows 11, and why it is the basis of many of its security features. Immediately there was reporting. It was, hey, Microsoft, and I'm not going to list those. I'm not going to give them the clicks, but hey, Microsoft doubles down on meeting TPM 2.0, and there was a lot of hand-wringing about that. I kind of find that a little odd since we've known this for 5+ years. I don't think anyone if you're using an enterprise device that is your laptop or desktop is 5 years old in the enterprise, that's not unheard of, but I'm willing to bet it is a niche scenario. But anyway, this got a lot of news. And then for reasons that are slightly confusing, what also got the news is this article saying the exact opposite. And there was literally a news outlet saying, Microsoft has dropped the TPM requirements for Windows 11. And what's odd about that is that this article has been around for at least 2 years. Zach Bowden, who is from, he's from which one? He's senior editor at Windows Central. Is like, well, this is the 2022 version, and this is the 2024 version. This is one of those things where corporate needs you to find the difference, because there really is no difference. So to super clarify, there's no change to the TPM requirement for Windows 11. It remains to be TPM. You still need TPM 2.0. Yes, there are res keys you can set to avoid that. But also everything you're seeing on the screen here still applies, which means you are not supported. And at any point, you may cease receiving updates, including security updates. So we're back to applying non-official patches. I wouldn't do it, but I appreciate that you might have some key devices where that's not an option. Just be aware that it is not supported. Microsoft isn't testing that scenario. And so they have security, especially with Windows 11, so much of the security is based on TPM 2.0 that if there's an issue in those security features, they are not going to get tested on something that doesn't have a TPM. So yeah, don't do it.
I think, Brian, just to add to that one.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say real quick, just to add to that, we didn't change the security posture. Security posture is still the same. You could also do things like bare metal install whatever you want in your device, even if it meets none of the requirements. Should you? No. This is definitely something where try to get as many devices as you can that are supported to upgrade, and those that aren't, change them out when possible, or get an ESU, which is an extended support agreement, to make sure that you can keep getting them updated until you are able to replace them. And I'm not telling you to dig a hole in the ground. I do understand the sustainability efforts. Please partner with your OEMs. Microsoft Store will actually even buy back the devices from you and properly recycle them or ensure that they're usable, and in different use cases where we actually can keep them supported. And you can also run Win365 VMs on them to get a free ESU. And so there are different solutions to try and make that better. But yeah, don't necessarily just update them. There was workarounds, and those are purely for evaluation purposes. They were never meant so that you could move production systems to Windows 11. Yeah. Jordan.
Oh, I didn't have anything helpful that. I'm just really sitting here in bated breath for the next link in Brian's browser tab, because I'm.
Should we make you wait longer?
I mean, you can if you want to.
So let's move to some Ignite news, right? So Ignite happened since the last time we met. It does feel almost feels like a long time ago, but nope, it was just after we last support group. So not going to talk about these at length, but Windows 365 Link, the first cloud PC device. This is I might get muted for this. Is Thin Client, and I'm actually interested to see the details on this. It is supposedly a lockdown Windows version of Windows 11 that it's confusing to me whether it needs to be managed or not.
The Win365 does. The actual puck itself does not. It'll automatically stay up to date.
Right. But do I know that? Do I have reporting on that? Like, how do I know that?
On that?
Okay. I legitimately don't know. I haven't had time to go dig into it. So it is. I believe there's some poo-pooing calling it Thin Client, but it is a single-purpose device that only provides value if you have a Windows 365 subscription. The question has been asked if it will work with Azure Virtual Desktop, and the answer I've received is no, and there is no plans to do so. So that's and there was a certain amount of poo-pooing this, but I'm here to there's totally scenarios where I think this makes all the sense in the world. We just went through a certain incident where airlines, and all sorts of our country almost ground to a halt. And people had these machines hanging up in crazy inaccessible areas, and this might be a solution for that, which is run all the hard stuff in a cloud PC, and you have a small, somewhat dumb, mostly self-maintaining piece of hardware that has no actual data on it itself. Like that, I think there absolutely are use cases for this. Is it a use case for like this picture? Let's say a developer that has like two 24-inch screens. I mean, I'm not saying it can't work for that, but that people tend to jump to the conclusion like Microsoft thinks you're going to replace all your devices with these. Maybe somebody at Microsoft does think that, but I don't really care. That doesn't mean that there's not very specific use cases in your org where maybe this actually makes sense. And if you're already a Windows 3, if you're already using Windows 365, then why the heck would you not consider this device?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I am intrigued by for it is just the fact that it's like it's a stateless device. Like that's interesting, right? In terms of shipping them to people's houses, even, right?
Right.
Like you have this thing that I don't have to really care about all that much. Put it in your house and then connect to the VM that I own. And it's no longer a game of like, how do I convince this human? How do I configure gateways? And how do I want to configure this? And it reduces complexity to what was at one point like a very interesting on-prem solution, right? For a lot of stuff like that. Like it's a definitely a interesting approach that solves some interesting problems. I can even see it for certain on-prem solutions too, like banks and things like that. Like, why would I need this department of users to actually have physical machines on their desks if I can just commoditize it back to an Azure budget for it? Hardware replacement? What's that? Right? What's the complexity of maintaining drivers, maintaining hardware, maintaining this mouse and this keyboard works with this and this graphics driver works with that and yada yada, right? Like, it's interesting from a certain business parallels perspective. Would it work for like us, for example, for like desktops where I need 100 and something gigs of RAM in order to like build and compile and run my config manager lab on? No, probably not. But that's not the intended marketplace. I don't think we should, as sysadmins, right, and a lot of it, like necessarily like jump to conclusions on it.
And I have some visceral reaction to this because like my first gig was supporting Citrix. And it very much in everyone in Citrix, right? Like we didn't actually manage a domain at the time. So we're talking 2005 era. And yet, like, when I moved on to larger orgs, like, not everybody's using Citrix, but there's still a fair amount of scenario where we're using Citrix. And so, like, this kind of solution in the industry has long found some kind of niche in use. And I see this as, I see this on par with that. This is Microsoft coming in and saying, well, what if we made it easier for you? At least that's what they're trying to do. I make no progress. I don't know if that's true or not, but like I have looked at Windows 365 and it does seem, and I have spun up Windows 365 devices. It is, I'll give it this, it is easy. So anyways, enough touching about on that. We'll probably talk about this later, but I just want to link this article. So hotpatch is coming from Windows 11 Enterprise. 2 notes on that. It is Windows 11 Enterprise. There was no stuttering there that I'm aware of. And I believe it is also exclusively...
And specifically 24H2.
Yeah. And I believe it is specifically through AutoPatch. But I don't want to bury the lead for Aria, so we're going to talk about that later. But here is the article. So another big thing that came out at Microsoft after some of the security incidents they had earlier this year is the Secure Future Initiative, SFI. That's what I keep hearing it.
Yep.
Am I getting that right? Okay. Yep. So of course they came out and talked about that. So here's just, I'm not going to walk through all of those things. Obviously they're calling out that Windows 11 is more secure than Windows 10. And again, part of that is due to the TPM requirement we've talked about. And again, I don't want to bury the lead. This is just a resource for you to go ahead and read as you so desire. So Microsoft, the Windows 365 team has been focused on frontline workers. And so those are, it's kind of a broad category, but the idea is that a frontline worker may not have a single device that is there, that follows them all over the place, that they, and you might have a sort of like kiosk or sharing a device. And share mode is coming out of public preview. So my understanding is you can buy a license that will cover 2 or 3 users, not simultaneously. So if you have shifts coming in and out of a manufacturing or distribution center, this might be an interesting scenario for you. And for I can speak from experience when I was talking about, hey, when we were talking about Windows 365 a minute ago, like, yeah, we used it all over in our distribution centers and manufacturing facilities. Like this.
Last I looked, it was 3 users, but yeah, per
right.
license.
Yeah. I wanted to say 3. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So Windows Auto Patch came out. Obviously, at Ignite, you should not be shocked. They talked a lot about Copilot, and I have seen internal previews of this. It should not shock you that every department, I'm sure, at Microsoft is working on one of 3 things: either their product, Secure Future Initiative, figuring out how to sell Copilot, and on the Windows Auto Patch team. To their credit, is no slouch in that either. So there is some interesting things in here. You might want to go ahead and read and take a look at what's going to come in the coming year. I'm going to finish up quickly here in what's new in Config Manager and Intune. So there was both a technical preview release, and then hotly after that, on the heels of that, came out an actual release of Config Manager that is currently in fast read. So 2409 is released. The 2 most important things that you probably care about is that Windows 11 24H2 is supported, and as is Server 2025. So those are the big things. There's some changes to SQL. So SQL 2012 and 2014 are deprecated, no longer supported. So you will need to update those. MDT is deprecated, but I do not believe it's removed in this release. And unless someone wants to correct me on that. So it was.
Hang on, I need to go look now. I think it was deprecated, but I think they also broke some of the steps for it.
Okay. So what Jordan is saying is that Config Manager has long supported a integration with MDT. MDT has been deprecated, is officially not supported in Windows 11, and the product team for Config Manager put out a deprecation notice that they're going to remove that MDT integration. What is unclear is that whether or not that removal was actually in 2409 or not. And I haven't actually updated to check it myself. But I also haven't used MDT integration in some time. And
it is.
And the deprecation notice said was released in 24, and then they also said it will be removed in 24. But that's usually not how they do it. It's almost always
they changed it. Yeah, it's okay. October 10th, 2025 now. It was initially December 2024 and planned in to support the first release after October 10th, 2025. It originally was that it was going to be that was going to be dead in the same version, I think.
Right, which is they've never done it that way. So that would have shocked me. So anyways, yes, if you're using MDT integration with your test sequences, you have your days are numbered, unfortunately. Lastly, what's new in Intune? The big one that there's a lot. I'm not going to go through all of these things, of course. The one that stuck out to me is that the latest LTS release of Ubuntu 24.04 is officially supported. The big one is device inventory is rolling out. I think at this point, most, if not all, tenants should see device inventory. Do note that as you initially roll it out, the data won't be there. It could take a couple of days, so you might see some errors and empty reports. But go ahead and get those policies out there. Why wouldn't you? It's free. It's included, shall we say. And lastly, there's a whole crap ton of new settings for all across Apple devices. So that's iOS and macOS and iPadOS. And so if you are managing any of those devices, you can go ahead and take a look and see if there's anything here you want to edit. That is it for me. Aria, what do you want to talk about?
You're actually finishing talking before the top of the hour, Brian.
I am.
I was worried we were gonna have to mute him. So this is actually kind of obviously amazing. Yeah. So I came up with a clearly great agenda, fully planned out ahead of time. Really, the 3 things I'm willing to talk to you people about. Wanted to keep it concise for Brian. Are Move to Windows 11, doing now. Copilot Plus PCs and hot patching, because I know there was a question in chat earlier, so I want to just address that one as well. Where do you want to start?
You could me.
I know this was choose your own adventure.
Oh, this was choose your own
This
adventure.
is your
You know what?
circus, Aria.
Yeah,
Oh.
I need,
Give us the option.
I need some humor. So let's talk about Copilot PCs.
Okay. Humorous. Okay, so Copilot Plus PCs, just to level set everyone, are the new devices that have a neural processing unit in them of at least 40 trillion operations per second. Really, the whole reason we built them, just I guess full transparency, is you can do a lot of really cool large language models in the cloud. And this gives you a huge amount of abilities. And that's what you'll see most Copilots or AI stuff that we're talking about is all cloud-based. When you think about Copilot Plus PCs, the whole idea here is, hey, wow, cloud compute is one, expensive. Two, it takes a lot of time to send a lot of stuff up and get a lot of stuff back. And three, we might want to do stuff that involves a lot of information on my local device, which means we want the ability to run smaller language models and other models locally on the device. And this is something, by the way, we've already been doing since even Windows 10. We have certain models that run locally, but they all eat up your CPU and your GPU. That's kind of annoying if you like your battery life or performance. But with these new devices, we're able to do more models and take everything out of the NPU, or most things out of the NPU, which means you don't get that performance hit or battery hit. And so Copilot Plus PCs are the new PCs to enable us to do more local AI. Questions, Brian? Did you get your laugh?
No, I mean, initially I know that the initial talk was with Snapdragons, but I mean, do you perceive that, what is the OEM uptake on this? And this is a question, I guess, maybe for the wider audience as well, because I haven't bought PCs at scale in 10, 15 years. So like, do you perceive that every new model from our normal OEMs, I'm thinking Dell and HP are the big ones. I know there's, I think Toshiba and Lenovo are coming third or fourth.
Dell, HP, Samsung, Lenovo, Surface, Asus, Acer. Pick your pick.
Yeah, but do you perceive that like everything is going to have an NPU, or is that like as we buy new
like
PCs?
This is like TPM. Like you started a decade ago, you're like, oh wow, TPM's new.
Yeah.
Devices don't have it. Now we're like, nope, every new device has TPM 2.0. Actually, in fact, Copilot Plus PCs all come with a Pluton processor. And so this is really that same direction of, in the future, in 5 years, I'm not going to be trying to sell you on why you should buy a device with an NPU. It's just, you're going to be buying a device with an NPU.
Okay, fair enough.
But you should get ahead of that now, because if you're refreshing your devices every 3 to 5 years, what situation I don't want commercial customers to end up in, and I think a lot are going to, is if you're doing a lot of device purchases now, right? You refresh your entire fleet in the next 3 years, and you refresh it with the either slightly cheaper or the devices you're used to, and you don't get devices with an NPU. And then we release actual features that have a lot of value beyond just improved Windows search and the ones we've announced. And you're like, oh, wait, this actually is giving me value. You're now going to have to wait 5 more years than you would have otherwise.
Well, give me a rundown of that, right? Because like everything is, one of the problems, Microsoft's doing what it's done before, which is like everything was Defender. Like 3 or 4 years ago, that was the joke, right? Like everything had to be Defender. And now we're solely
everything is Copilot.
Everything is Copilot. And I've been in so many calls in the last couple of months where it's like, hey, we're coming out with, Copilot for Intune, but it's all built on, but that's all built on Copilot for security, which is cloud, Azure, product, features, spend, whatever you want. But this is not that. This is local. And I'm not 100% clear on what local AI is built on. I mean, recall is obviously the big one. Search, I think I've seen, but like, is there, outside of those two, what things should people be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, right now the feature set is small, right? Like right now the feature set, I think for Windows is Paint, Co-Create, improved Windows search, live translation. There's actually some cool accessibility ones that are my favorites, like rich image reading, narrator, automatic alt text, which is huge because on all of my Twitter GIFs, I have to go in, or now I guess Blue Sky GIFs too, sure. I have to go in and add the alt text, and having that automatically generated in Word docs and stuff makes it helpful. Improved Windows search is probably the biggest one, to be honest, in productivity land. Like I can now search for photos of my dog, or now Jordan's dog, and I can find them even though I never label my files anything reasonable. at all.
I have seen this and can confirm.
Yes, I know. People are like, anytime I do a lot of demos, it's like, yeah, my file names are like presentation 1, presentation 2, presentation 3. Super helpful.
Underscore final. Come on.
Underscore final, draft, whatever.
Final 16. Yeah.
But like, yeah, the feature set right now is maybe 10, 15 features. And really, this is the question of, hey, we're heading in a direction where those are just Microsoft features. We actually have quite a few ISV features. Adobe has some. We talk about liquid text. We talk about Cephalable. There's a few that are actually being built on it as well. McAfee for consumer. And so really what we're talking about, though, is that is the direction we're headed. And right now is the smallest number of features we ever have. And I'm not going to lie, I wouldn't buy a device right now because of the features that it has that can only run on it. Like, just to be completely transparent with you, I wouldn't. I would buy one because these devices actually have all-day battery life, which from Windows is shocking. Like, this is the first time I've been like, oh my God, my Windows device almost matches my Mac, if not better in battery life. That's crazy. Yeah. The performance is faster than any of my other Surfaces that I've had. Or like right now, my Samsung device is doing phenomenally. Like, I go all day and I don't take a charger with me. That's mind-blowing for Windows, especially for being on Teams calls back to back to back to back, or I guess Zoom calls. Sorry, guys, whatever. This is. And so like for me, that's why I would buy one. And then the future value is going to come in later.
Well, there's a question in the chat too. Like, do NPUs have functionality outside of AI, like faster processing for specific tasks or anything like that? Or is it strictly going down the AI path?
Yeah, so it's similar to like, if you think about a GPU is primarily been designed and optimized for running graphics, right? Like, you're primarily using that for any of your graphics load. But that means you're taking that away from any of the things that would hit your CPU typically, which is kind of your generic processor for most things. NPU is the same. Like, it has been optimized for models and for AI workloads, which means, yeah, it's primarily going to be used for AI. Now, that said, there's going to be enough AI stuff that's already on your box that us offloading that to the NPU actually frees up your other processors. And for certain processes like Teams Super Resolution is a feature that we just came out with, which starts offloading some of the Teams work onto the NPU, which means your video quality is better and you're eating less of your GPU and your CPU. And so you will see, while it is optimized for AI, we are moving some of these things onto AI workloads, which go onto that chip, taking it off of CPU and GPU, leading to better performance for other things. Zoom, sure, too. Sorry.
To be clear, we're using Zoom only because we exceeded the number of people that we could have in a meeting for Teams without setting up live events for it, and that's oh
no, we exceeded the live events too. We had to enable that separate command to even allow more, but there's still a cap. So
yeah, I mean,
fancy.
To kind of take on that, right? Like, I appreciate your GPU analogy because that's really how I've kind of thought about it too. And you know, people have absolutely found novel uses for GPUs that are not, you know, just showing graphics, right? Like, yeah, if you are now, I don't know that hits any of us in some of our day-to-day jobs, but you know, I mean, not that I want to suggest Bitcoin mining, but if it does come to mind, please don't do that. I like our Earth, but there's a lot of also in the scientific community. I know there's been there's just a lot of processing, and doing it. GPUs are perfectly made for that. So I would not be shocked that NPUs go the same way. Yes, absolutely. The primary, they're being built for a specific task to offload it from a more generalized CPU that isn't as efficient at those tasks. But you know, somebody will almost certainly find other tasks that are similar and use that hardware.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of the direction we're going, is like really just building out more powerful chipsets.
Yeah. SETI at home, somebody mentions, like, yeah, is exactly that. All right. What do you want to talk about next, Aria? What's next on your list? I didn't actually look at your list, by the way.
So there's a question in Q&A apparently, so we probably should answer. I'm going to answer the 2 Q&A questions first, because we only have 7 minutes, and then I will get into the other agenda topics that we clearly came up with. So there's 2 questions in Q&A. We're going to start with the Copilot one, because that's kind of the third one. Okay, first of all, Copilots. I get they're confusing, and I get there's 100 of them, and Copilot plus PCs doesn't help because there's the hardware aspect. But it is Copilot, no spaces, like only the C is capitalized, no dashes, nothing. It's just Copilot. just regardless of Copilot or Copilot Plus PCs. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 is, does anyone here use Copilot for Intune? I would put that in chat in case you actually do use that. By the way, it's Intune, capital I, all lowercase other letters. Auto patch, one word. I mean, just
Don't
do your
take
own.
Stop. Put the shovel down, Aria. Put it down.
Just trying to help you. Now, in terms of the other question, that one's more a question for people in chat. Go into chat. If you use Copilot and Intune, answer that question. For the other question, which was hot patching, going back there for just a quick second. There was a question of how does hot patching work and what is it available for license-wise? So basically, hot patching is currently available in public preview if you have Windows Auto Patch. And what this basically means is if you are using Auto Patch whether through Intune UI or through the Graph APIs or PowerShell, take your pick, you can now actually opt in to deploying hot patches to devices. What these are is all of the security fixes in a given month, which we actually package in such a way that they can be applied without a reboot. Hot patches do not contain the non-security fixes or features that are in that month's quality update. And so what we do is a baseline, hot patch, baseline. What this means is every 3 months, you'll get a reboot and all of the fixes and features that were delivered over the last 3 months. And then you'll get a hot patch, which is security only, hot patch is security only, and then another baseline. I do want to make it clear, you will probably still reboot every month. And it's probably all of the people here's fault because you're going to be deploying drivers that require reboots. Potentially, you're going to be deploying other payloads that require reboots. I know some IT admins who just like to restart devices weekly because restarts do actually fix a decent amount of random issues. And so you will still be rebooting, but the value prop isn't about not rebooting. The value prop is about applying security fixes faster. Since even with a deadline and a grace period, you're going to take from pending install to reboot to wait for the user to, go and actually let the device stay plugged in overnight, or to click restart, or to schedule the restart. And you might be waiting an extra few days for that. Here, once it's installed, done. The security fixes are applied and you are secure. And so this actually reduces time to be secure. And that is the main value prop of it. Rebootless is just the catchy way of thinking about it.
And I do like to put a space in there. It's rebootless because like every 3 months or so. In fact, there's a question here, right there. There's a thing in your chat saying, hey, do you need, the December hot patch require the October baseline? It's like, yes. This is how hot patching works. There's a baseline. There'll be at least 3 of them. Sorry, 4? Yeah, every 3 months. So at least 4 a year.
4 of them.
Those baselines, right? At least.
At least, yes. Because if we do find a vulnerability, this is rare, but if we do find a vulnerability that cannot be patched in such a way that we can apply it without a reboot, think about things that are at lower layers, you're going to get patched because our number one thing, like this thing we care about most at Microsoft, literally something that's in our rewards discussions for every single employee, is security. And that means our focus is if we're going to have a decision between rebooting you and keeping you secure, we're going to keep you secure.
Of course.
Period. And I do think, just to clarify, this is only on Windows 11 24H2. Highly recommend updating it, especially if you're still on Windows 10 and you're thinking about which version to move to. I would actually consider going straight to 24H2. And the reason for that is it's going to be an OS swap. So if you move to 22H2, you'll have to take another OS swap to 24H2. But from there, you can then go forward in the Ethernet path, right? And so the other reason I would do that is because there are some features there that are just going to be fundamentally better than a lot of the features you'll see in 22H2, 23H2, such as hot patching. Now, to the other part of the question, which is, hey, what's actually the requirement? I'm super confused license-wise. If you have Windows Auto Patch and you're using it via Intune Graph PowerShell, which means you have A3, E3, F3, whatever, those can all opt in to the hot patch preview and should feel free to do so. I can try and find that link, but you'll be able to opt into the hot patch preview and deploy those hot patches to your devices and try to test them out. It's also available for not just client devices, but Win365 devices and server devices. For servers, you'll have to opt in via Azure Arc if they are not servers that are in Azure. So if they're not Azure VMs, you'll need to opt in via Azure Arc. You can then use Windows Update Group Policies. You can use whatever management tool you want, AUM, to then manage them and deploy those hot patches.
There's another question here about the update build revisions, which is like what the OS reports as its build number. Does that get updated via hot patch? And
the revisions will. So revisions are basically, so if you have the build.revision, which by the way, Windows 11 and Windows 10 are both 10.0. Windows 11 is then 2.2 something, whatever.
Okay.
24H2 is 26100. Each revision, whether it's a hot patch or a cold patch, will change that revision number. What that just means is you took a quality update with security fixes. They will have separate KB articles because technically the one that causes a reboot will contain all of the fixes, right? And features, not just the security fixes. The hot patch will have a lower KB number, so a lower revision number than that same month's reboot patch. But you can actually link to each other so you can see what's in the full one, what you're missing out on. If you decide, hey, there's this printer fix that Microsoft didn't think was security related, but is critical for my org, you can go and deploy that optional month update, or you can deploy the other security updates so that you are in control of saying, hey, nope, this is what I want. I want the full thing. You will then reboot until the next baseline. But you can be in full control from that perspective. And that's partially why it's limited to these E3, A3, F3 licenses, not just Pro and stuff, is there is this management aspect that you'll be wanting to do of these hot patches in auto patch to make sure that you are getting whatever optimization is working best for your organization. And if there are 0 day OOB updates, we will be pushing those out still because, again, we will want to keep you secure.
So what's I know it's auto patch, but because auto patch consumes Windows Update for Business, there's deployment service. There's a bit of confusion there in terms of licensing, right? Is it tied to the OS licensing? So I usually think of the deployment service was historically tied to the OS licensing, right?
It's the deployment services model. So if you were previously fine to use the deployment service, which is now the auto patch deployment service, which is really just saying that the backend is the same for whatever Windows Update management you're using. Right. Same thing applies. You can use this if you were using deployment service.
Okay, awesome. There was a question I think in there specifically about like, well, in Windows 365 on Windows, W365, Win 11, but non-E3. I don't even know if that's possible. But yeah, I think if you're not using a Windows OS subscription, whether it's and I don't know how you do that in Windows 365, but I'm going to presume you can somehow. Then no, like technically you are not enabled. That device. It's about how you license the OS. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to talk about? I think you had a third thing on the list. We still have time. If you need to go, I'll appreciate it, man. But
I was just going to say, move to Windows 11 now. Do not wait for October 2025. You do not want to be paying Microsoft money to continue getting security patches. If you need to for very critical infrastructure or devices, totally understand that. Plan ahead, budget ahead. But in most cases, for any one-to-one PC or one-to-multiple PC, really anything that's not, certain hospitals, manufacturing, etc., please, please, please move to Windows 11. Move to Windows 11 now. Don't wait. If you need new devices, consider Copilot Plus devices. But I think really just try to consider moving sooner rather than later, because you don't want to be in a situation of panicking later on in October next year and try to figure it out then.
I mean, it's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen, but, try not to be those big. Thanks for wasting over a perfectly good hour of your life with us. Thanks for joining. Have a great holidays. We'll see you on the other side.
This is only the first time we've ever used it, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. It is entirely possible. I will never, ever learn how to do this.
Clicking things is very hard, and Green is sharing his full screen, which is fascinating from security perspectives.
Yes. Yes.
That seems like a flaw.